Russia is in crisis with gas. The Kremlin on Monday accused the West of causing Europe's worst oil crisis and warned G7 economies it would retaliate against Moscow's plans to lower the price of Russian oil. President Vladimir Putin said the United States and its allies have been waging a trade war against Russia since they ordered the invasion of Ukraine on February 24, resulting in the heaviest sanctions in history. Strength. Since the start of the war, EU customers have pledged to reduce dependence on Russian energy, while Russia has cut or shut down supply to the three largest pipelines in the West, and oil supplies have shifted to the east. Russian gas giant Gazprom, GAZP. The Nord Stream 1 pipeline, one of Europe's main transport routes, will be shut down following an oil leak from a generator at a compressor station to deliver high-value petroleum products, said on Friday. Read more. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters in a conference call, "The oil problem arose because of the sanctions of Western countries, including Germany and England, against our country and blames us. We categorically reject this and ask the authorities. The West, in this case the EU, Canada, the United Kingdom, to respond as best they can to this situation." The Kremlin said sanctions were imposed on Siemens Energy, ENR1N. DE equipment and repair equipment for piping to assist in the repair of oil engines. Asked whether the use of Nord Stream will continue after the sanctions are lifted, Peskov replied, "Absolutely." EU countries have once again denied it, accusing Moscow of using nuclear weapons, and a German government spokesperson said on Monday that the recent rise in oil prices was part of Putin's strategy. The Kremlin also warned that Russia would retaliate against the Group of Seven's proposal to pay for Russian oil. This is a move that will not be good for Russia unless China and India follow the law. Can only take revenge, he said. Gas war. Russia used Siberia's rich oil and gas reserves to increase Western support for Ukraine, raising the risk of war in Ukraine and causing inflation that could affect Europe's largest economies. Russia is the world's second largest oil exporter after Saudi Arabia and the world's largest exporter of natural gas and grain. About 40% of Europe's oil and 30% of its oil comes from Russia. The Kremlin blames the European political elite for the rise in electricity consumers' prices. It is true that life and work for people, entrepreneurs, companies in Europe are declining, less income, lower quality of life, said Peskov. In fact, ordinary citizens will have more doubts about their country's leadership. And he spoke out against the EU and NATO. But the power struggle still comes at a cost to the superpowers. Selling oil and gas to the West has been one of the most profitable businesses in Russia since the Soviet Union built pipelines to Europe in the 1960s and 1970s, but often faces opposition from the United States. Redirecting oil from the Urengoi field in northern Siberia to other customers such as China is no easy task. China's border stretches for 3,000 kilometers, 1864. 11 miles away, the construction of the pipeline takes time and money. The EU needs a large economy to reduce demand, increase supply, and keep the energy market open. European generators are facing unprecedented challenges. Russian oil production, which is important for heating, industrial processes, and electricity, has dropped more than 80% this year. Energy products and energy prices have increased 15 times since the start of 2021, with a huge impact on families and businesses. The problem seems to be getting worse. Europe may be in its first winter without Russian oil, risks inflation, fuel shortages, and deep recession. European governments have begun to implement more sensitive policies. A set of policies aimed at reducing the impact of inflation on consumers and businesses. These include retail prices, tariff controls, subsidies for energy companies, and equity or capital support for energy companies even if they operate in the country. Another category of measures aims to stabilize and reduce sales costs and ensure energy security. This includes policies that promote energy savings and increase supply, but also limit energy prices, especially wholesale prices. These measures do not provide a solution for two reasons. First, the purpose is contradictory. Subsidies or capping the price can cause problems by increasing demand. Second, the cross-border impact. Promoting energy use can benefit consumers in one country, but can also hurt consumers in other countries by increasing consumption, leading to higher retail prices again across the EU. Analysis of available policy options leads to conclusions. Both problems can best be resolved by collaborating with the government to reduce energy needs and increase supply, while keeping the domestic energy market open and maintaining consumer convenience. High and volatile prices. The main reason for the increase in oil prices in Europe is the decrease in supply from Russia. Liquefied natural gas, LNG, is another alternative. The price of liquefied petroleum gas has more than doubled since Russia invaded Ukraine in February. The increase in the selling price of electricity indicates the increase in the price of electricity and the shortage of electricity, and electricity that must be supplemented by electricity from more expensive fossil fuels and power plants. Therefore, the most expensive energy currently meeting the needs of the European electricity market is natural gas. This means that most low-cost producers are very profitable unless they are locked into low prices through subsequent sales. In some cases, even increased coal and gas power generation may not be enough to meet demand. As a result, prices go up so high that some consumers don't spend at all, a phenomenon known as need to be destroyed. The European electricity market is tight and small changes in supply can have a big impact on prices. For this reason, wholesale electricity prices are changing rapidly as well as rising. This will ultimately encourage the widespread use of renewable energy generation and more efficient use of electricity. One way would be to do nothing but provide financial support to businesses and households until prices improve. However, this can be very expensive. Had the government met all of the electricity demand, the figure could easily have reached €1 trillion, or about 6% of the EU's annual GDP. Large government support could delay the transition to a new equilibrium price and create more support. The macroeconomic and financial stability crisis could be devastating as inflation continues to rise, forcing the ECB to tighten policy even further. In addition, the energy sector will face commercial and economic problems. A number of measures need to be taken to address the main problem of reducing the level and volatility of labor costs in the European wholesale market. But is it real? Wholesale price cap. The price cap proposal is divided into two parts, limiting fuel prices in the EU and limiting wholesale prices. By opposing price controls on all petroleum products, the EU will be prevented from extracting enough oil, which will cause prices to rise. It makes more sense to limit only Russian oil, which aims to reduce the country's oil profits while lowering prices in Europe. But such an approach poses no risk. Russia cannot easily change its oil supply elsewhere, so it will have economic interests. Continues to supply to Europe even at a lower price. However, Russia kept its economy and reduced its supply to Europe by 80%. If it retaliates by restricting the remaining 20%, it will do the opposite. In June 2022, Spain and Portugal received the so-called Iberian exemption, which lowered the price of natural gas used to generate electricity. Since power plants often determine the marginal cost, it effectively reduces the cost of electricity. The law regulates the cost of electricity in Spain and Portugal, but also encourages Iberian generators to burn more oil to produce electricity. Widespread use of the Iberian route in the EU could increase oil prices directly to the detriment of oil consumers. The electricity and gas market is uneven across the EU, so the system will also affect the distribution of ownership in the member states. A third option is to cover all markets in European gas hubs, including OTC and exchanges. These restrictions will apply to many long-term contracts, including Russian state oil giant Gazprom, which is tied to the price of oil. To ensure that the cap does not harm Europe's ability to withdraw LNG, the CFD mechanism can pay exporters the difference between the international price and the European price. The money can come from the EU budget. This will reduce fuel and electricity costs. Taxpayers have to pay the price, but they get more in the form of lower prices and subsidies. The problem is that it's hard to control the covers of any business. Businesses in restricted areas can dry out as sellers put fuel on the shelf at higher prices. Also, if the price peaks, the demand for gas and electricity will increase. Foreign suppliers, especially Russia, may fight for the upper limit, reduce or stop supply. Foreign buyers may also subsidize LNG imports to protect their customers, leading to increased competition from outside the EU. Demand will be exceeded and distribution will be required to restore business. Best.